it will also be emailed out to everybody who is currently registered for this webinar, so we won't miss anything. All right. So again, my name is Liz with Big Hairy Dog. We're going to be going over QuickBooks Point of Sale, and we're going to be taking a look at specifically reporting today. If you guys have any questions throughout the webinar, please feel free to type it directly into the chat. I'll be able to go ahead and see that, read your question, and we can discuss it right then and there. If your question is a little bit more specific to your setup, please trust when I say we will have plenty of time at the end, and you guys can ask those slightly more specific questions. But if it's not something really specific, please ask as we're going through. I love being able to go ahead and kind of pivot and focus where the need really is here on these reports. All right. Oh, and we are scheduled for a 2-hour webinar here. Like I said, it will not be that long, so plenty of time for questions. All right, the other thing to mention is that today I will be going over all of this through the lens of QuickBooks Point of Sale version 19. If you are on version 18, good news, you should actually be able to use just about everything that we're going to go over today. The only difference might be a few e-commerce reporting. All right. Sorry, I had to let in a few more people in our meeting room, but just in time, we are just about to get started. So far, all I've done is load up my QuickBooks Point of Sale here. I've ran a few transactions today. I have at least one PO and at least one voucher to get us started for today. But ultimately, like I said, we're going to go through our reporting. And this is our basic little agenda here. So we're going to start off at the top, and we're going to start off with our sales level reporting, followed by our cash drawer and then payments. All right, so one of the easiest ways to jump into our reports area is to go to the reports at the very top. So we can actually go into the reports center or our dashboard, which is technically two separate areas. If we go to the dashboard, this is something that is customizable. So our dashboard can be set up in any way that you want it. You guys can move or edit the reports, get rid of them, and even choose how many columns we see here. So I know this is not officially on my agenda. I don't believe it is. Yeah, not officially on my agenda, but we have the time, so I'm definitely going to go ahead and stop and give you guys a little bit of overview. If you are not already using your dashboard, definitely come on in here and play with it. It's actually been really helpful for a lot of my clients who don't tend to look at these types of reports super often. So it just having it right there, bird's eye view level, is always going to be, something easy for them to go ahead and handle, and tells them, when something kind of weird is going on here. I can see I have a pretty big change, and they're highlighted for me in red. Now, this is training data, so I'm not too concerned about that one. All right, but starting from the top, in the top left-hand side, we can go ahead and customize our dashboard. We hit that customize dashboard. This is going to allow us to just rip out anything that we don't need. We still have access to edit, and we can change the number of columns here. So 3 is the default number of columns. If you don't need that much, of course, you can go down, and 5, unfortunately, is the max. But honestly, going past 4, it's usually a little too small for a lot of monitors to make a lot of sense. All right, so we can go ahead and add additional information by going down to our various sales, employment, or any of our reporting areas, and then hitting add. All right. Sorry about that. We had somebody else joining here, had to let them in. Okay, there we go. So we can also go ahead and change the page name. The page name corresponds to the dashboard little tab here at the top. And when in doubt, QuickBooks does do a really good job of keeping these little reminders. How can we do more things? Click into it, and that opens up your digital user manual here. All right, let's go ahead and close that. Now, let me go ahead and add, actually, I am going to remove my sales year over year, and then we're going to go back to my sales, and then sales year over year. We're going to add that back in. And by default, it's displaying my graph. And you know what, for now, I think I'm going to leave that. I like the graphs a little bit more in my dashboard area, and then I'm just going to hit save. Does not matter which save we hit. We can hit the top one or the bottom one. All right, and there we go. For those of us who's just joined, we are just taking a look at the dashboard right now. Anything that you guys missed will be recorded and sent, or the entire recording will be sent to you via your email to anybody registered for the training here. All right. Now, when we come to the actual dashboard, outside of the customized dashboard, if you were to edit one of the reports, we get the option to edit essentially the filter. What range are we actually looking for? And then of course the results. You can hit save and that will rerun your report. When you hit save, that is also a rerun. If you have sales for the day, for example, hitting that refresh would allow all of your reports to go ahead and look at everything one more time. All right, again, this is our dashboard. You can always reset to the defaults. If you're not using it, definitely come in here and play with this a little bit, customize that dashboard to better fit your store. Now I'm gonna go ahead and close that, and we're gonna go back to reports. So the other area is our reports center. This is probably where people are a little bit more comfortable. So the reports center is our general overview for all of our reports. And the good thing about QuickBooks is that or I guess a good and bad thing about QuickBooks is that it is pretty structured. You can run a limited number of reports, and yes, we can create our own reports, but if you go through a create your own reports, we're kind of picking from a list. So most of the time, I'm going to say the report you're looking for probably already exists, but might need to be massaged just a little bit more. And we can do that by editing the report and modifying those filters. All right, but our overview is essentially going to be kind of our most popular reports and then a list of our memorized reports. If we go into I want to, I can manage my reports, and that's going to be in reference to my memorized reports as well. So I can see I have quite a few reports here. For example, if I no longer needed my item list 2, I can go ahead and highlight it. I can move it down, copy, rename, or delete it, of course. And that's going to be all for my memorized reports. All right. Now, under the All Reports section, of course, this is everything that QuickBooks has to offer out of the box. And it is broken down into essentially the same way we can see it here in my agenda: sales, cash, payments. We'll start at the sales. So if you go ahead and minimize these reports here, you can go ahead and see all of the titles. We have general sales, graphs, taxes, and shipping. We're going to start off with general sales. Now, for the purposes of this webinar, and because I just like having a little bit more control over my reports before they run, I usually suggest to keep prompt to modify report options before running the report. It's going to save me time, especially if you have a larger database. The last time that we ran it, I might have needed year to date, but this time I only need today, and I do not want to wait for year to date. So we're going to go ahead and run our best and worst sellers. And you can actually see this is the last time that we ran the report, so it's been some time, or at least this was the date that I ran the last time that I ran the report. But that modify allows me to change it now, and let's go ahead and I'm going to just click on the 17 here. So I'm going to go ahead and say December 17, and let's go to January of 17, excuse me. So I'm just clicking on the year itself, the date itself, to get those other menus. All right. And then I'm clicking in my desired area, January, for example, to get to drill down into that month. So we're going to do basically the entire month or the entire year of 2017 here. And let's see what happens. Again, training data, so I don't have too much recent stuff. That's why I tend to look into the past quite a bit. Now, at this time, before I even run the report, I have options to add and remove columns or to filter the data further. So for now, I think I'm going to leave it kind of as is. I want to see what it looks like, and then I'm going to go back and make some changes. So we're going to hit save, filter data. It already has my dates that I've entered. And Yeah, sales and return. I don't really want anything else. So the rest of this looks pretty good. I'm going to just hit save, and now I'm going to run. All right, there we go. And now I have some data to look at. Now on this screen, also customizable, so I can go ahead and either manually just move things on over. If I hold on to, it looks like on that little black flower, I can shrink or expand the columns. I can go ahead and adjust my column widths there at the top, and that's going to make it a little bit cleaner. But depending on the field, I actually might want that space just for visibility. Now, anything with a little blue dot in front of it, that is something that is sortable. Anything with a triangle in front of it is sorting. So right now we are currently sorting by quantity sold, and that is in a descending order. Um, so I like this, but I think I want to do something a little bit different. I'm not seeing department level subtotals or anything like that. It just kind of looks pretty basic. So I am going to modify this report. Hit modify, and we get that same exact report filter set up. So I am going to add or remove columns. And so I'm going to sort by quantity sold. That works. Descending order, all records. You know what? I just want this to be my top 100 here. So I'm going to go ahead and say best 100 records. And now I'm going to hit save and run. All right. And now it's, my top 100 report, essentially. Best 100 records at the top as well. You will find that some of our report filters can be accessed here. So that's going to include, like I said, best filter and then the date range. All right. Now, other than that, if I like this report and I want to keep a version of this report, then I can come over here to the I want to and memorize this report. So this is not best or worst anymore. It's actually just the best 100. And then this is specifically 2017. Now, I can change the dates, so I might not actually want to keep that 2017 within the title, but that is just an example of a way that you can build something to constantly be looking at the same date range or a dynamic date range, but the same items, and that would be one of your click of the button reports. But we're just going to leave this at best 100 items, and I'm going to say okay. All right. And now if I go ahead and close that report and I go back to my overview, I can see my best 100 items. I run that one more time, and there we go. I'm getting the same exact items. All right, I'm going to go ahead and close out of there for a second. Let's look at something a little different, something that I can go ahead and group a little differently. So my item summary report. And for this guy, I'm going to, to 2020, 2021 to 2020 to 2021. Let's see if I have stuff. Cool. I do have some data. And so in this data, I'm going to modify the report because I don't really like the order that I'm seeing it in here. So of course, I can go ahead and drag and drop. You have the permissions too. And of course, signed in as sysadmin, I have the permissions. But I'm still missing a little bit of information that I think is going to make this report really work for me. So we're going to come over to modify one more time. Add, remove columns. And let's go ahead and add additionally, maybe my department, attribute and size, and we'll also leave an item number. Total margin dollars, sure, why not? All right, and I'm not going to create subtotals for this field. I'm going to sort based on my department and create subtotals for that field actually. And run. All right. Now, I also could have changed the position within that modify area. I just decided I wanted to go ahead and pull these apart manually. So I'm adding in my item number, my department, attribute and size, margin. Okay, the rest of that can stay there. But now I also have my subtotal. So here is my subtotal for this first department. And I go down, and of course I'll have a subtotal for the next department as well. Pretty standard department or department-based item summary report. We can also do this by vendor. Okay, and change that subtotal by vendor. Modify, add remove columns. Instead of sorting by department, we're going to sort by vendor and leave that create subtotals. And there we go. Now I have my Tory Richard, and if I scroll down to the bottom, I will eventually find my subtotal for my Tory Richard vendor here. All of our reports can also be exported. So in order to export, you do have to have Excel on the machine. That is something that's kind of a frustration point for some people, especially if you've purchased Excel online or anything like that. It does have to be installed on the computer itself. But we can export to Excel, and it will export pretty much as is here. So when I say pretty much as is, I do want to remind people, oh, excuse me, there it is, that if we're looking at something, let's say like a journal report, a journal is going to be something that you can get item level information, like a sales report with item level information. We might want to expand that out before we export. Let's go ahead and take a look at one of those. All right, let's go ahead and back up. So something else happened just now. A new report opened up for us. So let's talk a little bit about why that happened. So on this report, you'll notice that my little cruiser turns into a Z with inside a magnifying glass here. That just means that you can drill down into this particular data field. So for this item, I am able to drill down. So I can open up a sales detail this way. And this is actually a good example of one of my or one of my fields that needs expansion. So I can open that up and I can see that this was on this particular receipt. There's my receipt number. I can actually drill down one more time, and that's going to open up the actual receipt that this item was on. I know it looks a little different because we're used to seeing receipts either through our point of sale or sales history. This is just what they look like on the back end, kind of like our POs or order screens. We have our receipt number, any customer information, pretty much anything that we need in order to run the audit. All right. And again, that is still all from within my item summary. Let's go ahead and go back. Now, I really did not have to close those other additional reports. I can keep them open. Just like a Google Chrome window, I can have various tabs open and they can be all filtering to different items, and I can be drilling down to any level within those items. Let's go ahead and take a look at a quick detail report. So view sales receipts for a specific time period. Now we're going to make this one a little bit easier. We're going to do today, and I think I only have like 2, if that. So we're going to go ahead and run this for today, and I'm just going to hit run. There we go. I have a whole 3. I have a whole 3 report or a whole 3 sales here, and I can go ahead and choose to expand. And that's going to open them all up automatically. Like I said, might want to do that if I'm going to be running an audit and I'm going to throw this into an Excel sheet first. When you do throw it into an Excel sheet or anything outside of QuickBooks, we do not have access to the titles that these are tied to. Really, even in QuickBooks, I don't have the titles that these item details are tied to. If I want to know what that is, I have to go into Modify, Add Remove Columns, and we get a secondary tab here. The secondary tab obviously is not always here. We didn't see it on some of our higher level summary reports, but anything that has item level detail, we're going to be able to control whether or not that detail is displayed, just like this guy, and what displays when it is shown. So right now we're looking at department, vendor, our item description. We got our attribute and our size there, followed by our sales quantity, extended price, but we would have to know that. See, there's no titles for it. If we did get this into Excel, though, we could open up another a row and we can manually add our titles in. All right. Now, for this particular report, the sales detail is pretty standard. I'm going to collapse all my fields so I'm seeing more of the summary. Again, this is meant to be a little bit more of an audit report if things have gone wrong and I have to go receipt by receipt to figure out what's going on. Hopefully we do have a little bit more information. If I know that there was a problem with a specific customer, I might want to go ahead and modify and filter to that specific customer first, or perhaps that cashier first. All right. Now, what you can filter by does change depending on the report that you are trying to run. But when in doubt, please don't forget that you do have the ability to both include and exclude information. So when you're trying to do that audit, but I don't care about any of my service items, for example. If service is in one specific area or department, I would be able to exclude that specific department from this list. And I'm just going to go ahead and pick. Right now, I have a tailoring store loaded here, so we're just going to go ahead and say suits. Suits exclude, and then I'd be able to go ahead and run this and know that I'm looking at everything besides that specific department. Really, that was a few departments, right? We picked from a list there. All right. Now, the change report appearance. It's another one that we haven't really gone into just yet. The change report appearance is actually pretty shallow for what it can do. The add or remove columns definitely changes more of what the report can actually give you. This is essentially just what does it look like displayed literally, whether we're using our large blue font, what the company name is listed as. And actually, I had updated my company name in my workstation preferences, but I didn't update it in a lot of these older reports that were saved and created for the specific client. So if you have an issue with your reports not quite keeping up with what you have listed in your company preferences, this is where you want to change it. All right. So we're going to call it our puppy love retail. And I'm just going to save that. Now, when you save it, you do need to rerun it, and that's when you're going to see that update. Now, one more time, if I were to go ahead and want to keep this, I can hit that modify, or excuse me, not the modify, that's going to be under I want to. Once you have modified a report, any report at all, you can memorize this report, and you can save a new report title right then and there. Under the I want to, we actually have additional items as well, kind of the same things that we've already been playing with, just all under the I want to. I can go ahead and add this report to the dashboard. I can add or remove columns, which would bypass that modify button and get me directly into that modify or report area. Change report appearance, we were just there. That's going to be our fonts. And set report access level. Now, the report access level, this does depend on if you guys have security permissions. So if you guys have multiple associates, different levels, we have our level 1, which is our point of sale, our managers, back office, all that good stuff. That's where really this is going to come into play. By default, everything is a medium security, so that's going to allow our owners, managers, and assistant manager default groups to run it. And then we can go ahead and change it from there. So default medium, I can bring that to low security so that any one of my sales associates would be able to run this particular report. If you guys ever notice that reports are grayed out or anything like that, double check your security permissions. All right. And of course, before I go ahead and leave that page, one more thing. So we do also have the ability to customize the groups. So we can choose to make every report of medium security, but now I'm going to make the people who need access to my reports part of my assistant manager group that has access to the medium, or part of point of sale 2, my key holders that have access to the medium security groups. If anybody has any questions on changing permissions, we can absolutely take a look at that at the end of our webinar here. All right, further under the I want to, of course, we can go ahead and show that print preview. And of course, that's just exactly what it's going to print out as. And we can see here, I definitely would want to change this to landscape or something because it is cutting off the rest of my report. And I really wouldn't want 2 pages for just those extra 2 columns. So exit out. When in doubt, always print preview before you actually print out a report, especially if it's a brand new report or you've done a lot of changes to the columns. All right. Now, let's go ahead and talk a little bit more about these other report types, because I know we did kind of skip around. I apologize. We dove right into making some modifications and making some edits. We're going to back up a little bit here. So I'm going to go back to my all reports. And so again, we're under our sales area. So sales, of course, everything to do with point of sale. If it was on a receipt, we are going to be able to report on it in one of our sales reports. And the various reports just depend on what level you want to actually see. So vendor summary, all of our sales, but at a summarized vendor level. If I go ahead and display this report, it's essentially the same thing as running this report. Let me go ahead and just hit run. And there we go. And again, we would modify if we need to. We're going to go and leave that up. Now, our cash drawer reports. Our cash drawer reports are going to be essentially all things X and Z out. In addition to payouts, occasionally I like to call these guys disbursements. Essentially, anything that we pulled money out of the drawer outside of giving someone some change on an actual receipt. All right. Now, the biggest thing, the difference between an X out and a Z out. And then furthermore, the difference between an X out drawer close and an X out store close. Excuse me, drawer count and store close. So first things first, the difference between an X out and a Z out. An X out is a status report that does not reconcile anything. It does not close anything, but it does allow you to run a status check for your store, for your workstation, for your cashiers, or all cashiers, all stores, all workstation. And it looks very, very similar to the Z out. So if I go ahead and run this report, and we're going to run it for today, beautiful. Awesome. You see pretty much the exact same information that I would be able to see on the ZOut, with that difference being on an XOut, we do not have any of the reconciliation. So I don't have a count, I don't have a leave, an open, a deposit amount. It does not exist here. All right. I'm going to go ahead and go back. Now, my ZOut drawer count is just that. That's what we're gonna use to actually count the money that's in the till. So this is our close. This is our reconciliation report. Our ZOut store close is just to close the store at the end of the day. This does not actually reconcile your drawer and does not allow you to enter in any count information. So if you guys are having stores that are reporting, hey, the ZOut won't let me put in any tender, they're using a ZOut store close. All right, and just really quick, because it is important, most people hit this at the end of the day, right? Is our button there, or we sometimes have an end of day button over here on the side. Either way, it's pulling up the exact same point of sale end of day process. And this is where we want to make sure that it's set up to ZOut drawer count instead of ZOut store close. It does hold the last thing that you ran. So if a manager walks up and runs an X out, the next time we close this store or this workstation, I have to remember to change it to the Z out. All right. Go back to my report center, cash drawer. All right. Now, my ZOut drawer count, let me go ahead and run this. Now, I'm going to go ahead and run it for today. And of course, I'm not going to really filter for anything. If you guys have multiple workstations at your location or at your store, normally we set up different versions of the ZOut report, each looking at a specific workstation, because by default, your ZOut does try to look at all sales for the store that you are looking at. All right. So if this is workstation 1, then I'd put in workstation 1 and we'd save this as ZOut workstation 1. All right, we're going to go ahead and run that example really quick. So there it is, and we're going to go run, and then now I get to do my start and count. So we began with $150. That was what was entered, or it's not 100, excuse me, $100.50. That was what was left as my leave for the night before. And so now I'm going to go ahead and enter in my count. And let's go ahead and say that there's just $200 in there. Of course, I can go ahead and go down and enter in all my denominations. Hopefully that's what is happening. But for our training purposes, we're just going to say there's $200 in there. And of course, that does also show me what my deposit should be right now, the $99.50. Remarks not required, but would definitely say if something weird happened, the power went out, you found a check in the back, that's what needs to go under our remarks here. Now I'm just going to hit OK. All right, now we are a little short. So right now I still have the time to say no, go back and recount. And I'm actually going to do that. And let's say, all right, I found two 20s, but that's it. All right, still a variance, but that's much more of an acceptable variance. At this point, I've recounted everything. Maybe I even called my manager, but I have to accept that this is what's in the till right now, and I have to hit yes. And there we go. Now we have our ZOut drawer count. You can see my total sales. I had no returns for today, and then my nets. All right, my dollars paid in, paid out, my begin, excuse me, was my opening amount. We counted the 240. I'm short the 819, but I'm leaving the 150 for that total deposit. There it is. This is making a lot more sense. And then of course we have our media count as well. So I can see here that this user counted two 20s and two $100 bills, did not put in any change information whatsoever. So if I look at the till and I see a bunch of change, there's my discrepancy. They didn't even count it. All right. And at the bottom, I am currently displaying my credit and debit card totals as well as my card listings. So if you are processing directly through merchant services, you can still go ahead and get all of this information and a little bit extra. This would actually an example of what it would look like to be standalone as well, since I actually do not have a pin pad set up. So at the end of the day, because I am standalone and I do not have a integrated pin pad, I would also want to confirm that my totals match up to whatever my credit card processor says at the end of the day. All right. Now, like I said, I want to keep this report. This one's filtered to specifically workstation 1, and that's what I want. I want a workstation 1 and workstation 2 specific ZOut. So I'm going to, oh, excuse me, not modify. I want to memorize this report, ZOut drawer count, WS1. And okay, here we go. Now I can close that. And now when I go to my end of day, I can see my ZOut drawer count, and I see this is where I need to kind of shrink that ZOut drawer count name a little bit because the WS1 is being cut off. Let's fix that. So we're going to go back to our reports, report center. I am going to manage my reports, and let's rename. Let's go ahead and just call it ZOut close workstation 1. Or I could have left it ZOut workstation 1 ZOut. Whatever works for you, whatever makes most sense to you and your team, so long as it's very clear that this one is for workstation 1, so workstation 2 does not accidentally use it. All right, close that. Close that one. Now again, end of day, whether it's from my icon or my side button. Now I'm going to have my reports ZOut close workstation 1. All right. And of course, if you have just the one workstation, you do not have to worry about adding that modification. Just run your standard close, ZOut drawer close at the end of the day, and that is looking at everything. Perfect. All right, now let's take a look at the rest of our report types. All right, and we have our items reports. This is going to be everything to do with our merchandise and also where you can find your inventory valuation or your inventory evaluation for a current understanding of what the value of your inventory is. The nice thing about this particular report is that it does not actually have to be for today. We can run this for yesterday, for example, or the end of last week, the end of the month last month. So if you forget to run your on-hand report that last day of the month, let's say that we actually forgot it because it's pretty early in the month now. I can run that for the 31st and I can choose to run. Now there's a lot of items in here. Come on. Sorry, I knew that wasn't going to take a second. Let's see here. I can get it to go a little bit faster. All right, let's actually make this for today instead. Today, click that bottom one. All right, sorry guys. I think this is just my limited training data being a little bit weird here on my inventory evaluation. It is a pretty standard report, but it is giving me just a little bit of problems here. I recently loaded this. I might have to wipe it and then reload it. Not something that you guys should ever have to go ahead and deal with. Please check out your inventory evaluation report. If it is giving you any problems, give us a call. That's what we're here for. But for the sake of our webinar here, I'm going to run another report. Let me actually see what I got here. Vendor name, department. This is essentially everything. Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and run an item list instead for right now. And let's go ahead and change my filter. There it is. So I can see here, this is actually looking for something specific. So I'm going to clear that. Okay. And run. There it is. All right. So this is subtotaling by style. Again, maybe not my favorite, but this particular client was a very style heavy inventory and it was necessary for their setup. So they needed those style level groupings. And I just don't have a whole lot of data in here right now. Let's go ahead and come on back. The only difference between our item list and the evaluation report is the evaluation is essentially an on hand, whereas the list will show you everything. Item summary with activity is another really good movement report if you want to see kind of what's been going in and out of inventory. Mobile sale items is going to be if you are using like the Go Payments app or QuickBooks Mobile Payments. Adjustments. The system is writing down adjustments for you on the back end. So we always have at least a little bit of an audit trail. So if you ever try to figure out what's been going on with your inventory in regards to quantities, be sure to check those adjustment summaries or even adjustment details. An adjustment, quantity adjustment is created anytime there's a change to on-hand quantity. And I'm going to go ahead and run this for today. And let's change this to January 1st. Again, I really don't have much of anything in here. I got a little something. Expand that out, and there we go. So I can see that these are all of the adjustments that have been made recently. Most of them are pretty small. This is what we normally expect to see from an adjustment report, 1 or 2 items per memo. Down over here, I have quite a bit of movement, and that's because that one is actually a physical inventory though. Again, to be expected for something of that type. All right, close that on out. All right, sorry, I just wanted to make sure that there were no questions in the chat. I thought I saw something there. Okay. Purchasing, of course, this is our purchase orders, also our vouchers, and then the vendor list. You can pull it from this as well. Purchasing, anything on order does not affect inventory. If it is on a PO, then it is for planning, and that quantity doesn't go anywhere. Vouchers, though, on the other hand, are receiving vouchers. That is what officially adds on hand to our inventory. So the process, as you guys are already aware, we create the PO, we reference that PO on a voucher, and then the updated voucher is the final piece. That is where our on hand, that's where our quantity, cost, and price all have to be correct. Now, one of my favorites for our purchasing is our cash requirements. So this will go ahead and show you what POs are coming up due within the next 30, 60, and 90 days. Essentially a planning report. There we go. So brand new POs, I really only have the one, and that's going to go ahead and come due pretty soon here. Go back to my all reports. Summary is just that, a summary of what's currently outstanding, and then detail is your more journal reports. This is where we're going to get the item level information again, or we can get that item level information. In fact, I can double click and then go directly to the PO. Let's close out of there, come back here. And that is my detail. Now, by default, your summaries, details, they are all looking at outstanding purchase orders. So that is purchase orders that still have a quantity due. You can change that in your filters if you want to kind of look at everything, but usually that is fine. We only need to know what is still outstanding anyways. Same thing with our receiving vouchers. Difference between our purchasing and receiving is there's not going to be really outstanding versus non-outstanding. As long as it's an updated voucher, it is part of your voucher history. There's kind of no getting around that. If there's been a mistake with the voucher, that's when we can go ahead and copy, correct, and return, or you can reverse. Now, I will say be very careful with reversing vouchers, especially outside of the same day. Outside of the same day, reversals tend to cause a mess in reporting and a mess in your QuickBooks financials if you are integrated with financials. Keep that in the back of your mind. There is an alternative method called the copy and correct method. And again, if anybody has questions on that, more than happy to go over. And then, of course, our vendor list is just that, a list of all of our vendors. We can change this, we can export this, we can get this into Excel. In reality, I could even just export the vendor list. I don't necessarily need to make it into a report in order to do that. All right, let's go ahead and close that for a second. Excuse me while I move that. Coming down to the vendor list. And again, I can go and say I want to and export to Excel, and that would send it pretty much as is here. All displayed vendors. And I can choose the mapping or the template. So two ways to get that same information for your vendor list. Going back to my report center and our reports, our employee list. Our employee lists are pretty light. There's not too much to look at for employees. But if you are a commission-based store, then of course that's something we definitely want to look at. So our commissions reports, sales reports, sales graphs, tips. If you accept tips, there we also have a tip summary and tip details. The time shift would be our time clock. So checking in and out, we'd be able to keep track of them or keep track of their timesheets here. And then of course, same thing. We have our employee list. We could also just export directly from the employee module as well. So let me go ahead and just run a sales by employee, and I'm going to go ahead and run that. I know I don't have associates in my setup currently, so that's why I just ran it. So everything's listed under my quote unquote blank associate. We could even force people to have to select associates on transactions, but the key to using commission or any kind of you get credit for this sale is by using associates. Remember that the cashier is the person who is signed in, the associate is the person who gets credit for the sale. All right, now I know I don't have any time shifts, but let me see. All right, so I said I know I don't have any time shifts loaded, but this is just a standard weekly timesheet. If you are using check-ins and check-outs, especially if it's something new that you've implemented, be sure that you're double checking your check-ins and checkouts, I would suggest daily until people are not making those simple little mistakes. It's a lot easier to fix it, when it's new than to wait until it's the end of the pay period and everybody has 4 or 5 time clocks that need to be updated and corrected. All right, our financial exchange, this only comes to play if you are integrated with QuickBooks Financials. Remember, if you are integrated with QuickBooks Financials, that just means that they talk to each other usually once a day, so that way we can update our financials with what's going on in point of sale, sending all of our receipts, all of our vouchers, which are bills in financials, memos, customer liabilities, so like store credits or charges, and then of course vendors as well. And then our last little section here are just the memorized reports. So again, we can go ahead and run and edit them from this screen, or of course we can come back to our overview and we can run or edit them from this screen as well under the I want to manage my reports. Okay, let's open this up. All right, so that's it for the various reports types. And for the modifying reports, like I said, we did kind of look at this already. I apologize to jump the gun there. But date range, especially if you're not too heavily using reports now, be sure before you go ahead and start running and start playing with them, click on that prompt to modify report options before running a report. No use in you waiting an hour to run 5 years worth of data when you only need to run it for today, right? Adding and removing columns, we took a look at that. Now, the system, like I said, does have a very structured way of looking at reports. So you can't really break things in the way of, being able to put items onto the screen that wouldn't fit within that area. You are limited. So we're going to take a look at building a report from scratch, and we're going to kind of uh, use everything that we've learned so far to do this. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and close this up, and I'm going to go back to my overview section and I'm going to create a report. Like I said, still very structured. So even though we're creating this report from scratch, I have to tell it what kind of report. Are we looking for sales, customer, inventory, purchasing, employees? And let's just say I'm looking for sales. So we're going to say sales next. Now, are we looking for something more of a detailed report, a summarized report? Are you looking for taxes or mobile sales? I'm going to go ahead and do a detailed sales receipt list. All right, and I'm going to hit next. Now, right now, I can immediately start to add or remove columns. And because we're building this from scratch, I'm going to hop in there, but we're going to run it kind of as is. And then we'll come back and make further edits. But we have dates, totals, receipt numbers, receipt types, taxes, first and last name of our customer, and then cashier. Pretty standard. And actually, if you've never edited your sales item detail report, you'll see it looks just like this. Details, just the same. These are the standard ones. So let's go ahead and hit save. And for now, like I said, I know I only have a little bit of data, but we'll run it for today. And under filter data, again, we can go ahead and add additional things here. So actually, I'm going to go ahead and in addition say, really the rest of this information, payouts, mobile sales, anything that's not a standard sale or return, I want you to exclude that. So that's something a little bit different that I'm doing than the default. And now I'm going to run. And there we go. So again, I can go ahead and expand that out. You guys see what I mean by we can build it from scratch, but this exact report already existed. I just needed to edit the filters a little bit more on what currently exists. But either way, right, it's 6, half dozen, it's the same exact thing, whatever you're more comfortable with. Now in the I want to, I can memorize this report. I can call it whatever I want to call it, and then it's saved right there, click of a button for me. If I go to back to modify and date, instead of custom, I'm just going to leave it at today. So leaving it at today is using what we referred to earlier as a dynamic date range. It will always update. Tomorrow, today's going to be the 5th. The following day, today is going to be the 6th. Day after that, today's going to be the 7th, right? Um, Another example of a dynamic date range is going to be like last 30 days. Doesn't matter when, it's always going to be a rolling 30 days when I run this. Run. All right, there we go. I got a little bit of data here. And now I can say I want to memorize this report. And then we'll call it last 30. Little something extra. I'm going to add the word reg, R-E-G, regular. So regular sales detail last 30. So I know this is my standard sales and returns. No additional information is going to be there. No mobile sales, nothing. So there it is. We're going to go ahead and say, oh, okay. And now I can close that. Under my reports, memorize reports, there is my regular sales last 30. And actually, there is my ZOut close for workstation 1 as well. And there you go. Like I said, running this tomorrow, that's going to be from the 7th to the 5th. All right. And you can do that, like I said, with any of the reports. It will not allow you to go ahead and create a report in which it won't allow you to create a report that you can't use, essentially. The only time that the report is going to give you absolutely no data, nothing's quite working, always check the filters. It's usually something in the last time that you ran it. Someone was looking for a specific department or a specific vendor, and we cleaned it up so it's not there anymore. Always check your filters or your date ranges. All right. But with that, we have gotten to the end of our little section here. So, like I said, not a full 2 hours or anything. If you have any questions, please feel free to raise your hand. If you have a mic, I can unmute you. You can ask the question. But other than that, I want to thank you guys so much for sticking with me. I know there's a lot of clicking around when it comes down to reports. And at the end of the day, the more time you guys get spending getting comfortable in reporting, the easier time you're going to have in managing and pulling that data, quote unquote, out of thin air whenever you need it, right? Please be sure to check out that dashboard and customize that dashboard if you haven't been using it already. All right. Oh, and sorry, it looks like we do have a. Oh, yeah. It looks like we have a request for a customer level report, customer history. And absolutely. So in our customer section, we have our generals and then we have our orders. And so we can go ahead and we also have our reward program for those of you using rewards, where you can take a look at their member list, who's currently part of your rewards, and then who has already earned or redeemed those rewards. So let's go ahead and take a look at customer sales. All right, customer sales, we're going to go ahead and say all, and we're going to sort by, let's do last name. That'll work. Okay. Excuse me. So here at this level, this is a summary. So by customer, I can see a total of everything that they've purchased, and how much they've spent with me, all of that good stuff. So this is amazing for trying to figure out the people who've spent the most. And I'm just so sorry, I just reread the message. We're actually looking for more of a customer, excuse me, history. You want to see every item that this customer has purchased. And for something more of a customer history, although the customer sales, it's just not down to the level that we need. I'd actually probably point you more to a sales detail and then filter to that specific customer. That way I have access to all of that customer's receipts and every item that they purchased. So for example, if I were to go ahead and, this is my sales detail that we were working on earlier, sales detail, and I'm going to modify filter data, and I'm going to look for a specific customer here. Ship to full name. Where's my regular customer name? All right. Oh, there it is. Ah. All right. Now we're going to go ahead and say this was, I think I had just have it as Liz Martinez. There it is. All right, so I have all of my Liz Martinez here. I can go ahead and expand this out, and I'd be able to go ahead and run this, or I can export this. So now I have an entire list of everything that this customer has purchased in the order that they purchased it. Well, actually, right now it's not in the order that they purchased it. There it is. So the dates in the order that they purchased it. You could also run an item level report, an item summary report, and do the same thing, filter to the customer itself if you don't necessarily need it, the receipt level information. Awesome. Okay. So thank you so much, Gloria. I appreciate the question. I'm glad it might help you. Let us know if you have any issues with it. And again, that's just your standard sales detail from the beginning. That would be under sales detail, and then we just filter to a specific time frame and a specific customer. You could run that for all time and still a specific customer. Awesome. All right. Oh, and one more question in regards to the recording. Yes, so the recording is going to be emailed, a link, a private link to the recording is going to be emailed to everybody who is registered for this webinar. So if you are signed in already, you're automatically going to get it. If you were registered but didn't sign in until the middle, you're still going to get it. And then after that, it will also be available on our previously recorded webinars at bighairydog.com. So for those of you not aware of our new, well, it's newer. Let me go ahead and say we have a recent change to our website if you haven't been on for a while. All right, come on, bighairydog.com. Sorry, my computer started moving pretty slow right when we started here. All right. Okay, so normally if you are on a larger resolution monitor, you're actually going to see these options straight across the top, like right underneath our gray banner here. I'm running this over a laptop, so because that screen's just a little smaller, I have to click into the big hairy dog picture, and then it'll allow me to go down to my customer center. All right, now if I scroll down here, we have our upcoming webinars and our previously recorded webinars. So the previously recorded webinars is where this is going to end up. And then you'll just see it here at the very, very top, April 4th, QuickBooks point of sale reporting. And anybody, you do not have to be signed in under something specific. Anybody can watch these. So once it's up on our regular YouTube, you can even send the link to whomever you'd like, but we will be sending them to everybody registered first. All right. So with that, thank you so much. I'm going to hang out for a little bit longer. If anybody has any questions, please feel free to go ahead and type into that chat. Other than that, thank you so much for joining me. My name is Liz with Big Hairy Dog. Oh, and before I go, if you found this helpful and you wanted some additional training or anything, maybe even not reports, please feel free to give us a call at, we'll do the 916-368-1070. That is actually our main tech support line. So if you have an issue, we can still help you there. But you can also just ask for any member of our service department, and they will help schedule out some time with either myself or Daryl or one of our other trainers here to get you up and running and at the level you need to be at. All right. Thank you so much, everybody. Like I said, I'm just put myself on mute. Feel free to hang out and ask questions, or you are dismissed for the day if you have no questions. Thank you. Bye. All right. I think that is it. We don't have anybody in our lobby anymore. So thank you again. This has been Liz with Big Hairy Dog. Have a great rest of your day.